Hello, my name is Priyanka Erandi, and I welcome you to this event, Land a Job in Climate by Solving Climate Company Challenges. I am a volunteer here at WoCl Climate, and I am going to be the facilitator for today's event. My team members, Felix and Nicolette, are going to help throughout the event with technical support. We are going to record this, being recorded rather, this event, and we will be posting the recording on our YouTube channel and on our website. So for those who are new, WoCl Climate is a nonprofit organization with a mission to make the climate work mainstream. With a community of more than 29,000 members, we regularly conduct events like this one to help professionals transition into climate-related careers. If you would like to join us, just scan the QR code to fill out the interest form and visit our website, woconclimate.org, for more details. Our partner organization, Climate Drift, shares our mission, and we are very, very honored to have its co-founder, Marco Morawec, join us as a guest speaker. Marco is a successful entrepreneur with experience in building and scaling educational companies. He has also guided numerous professionals to get into newer careers. So we are very happy and thrilled to have you here with us, Marco. And we are eager to learn from you your approach in how to land a job in climate. So the stage is yours.
All right. This is the moment when I wonder, why did I not match my shirt to the one on the picture? That would have been so cool. I still have that shirt. Okay, so now I need to click around and show everyone how good I am with Zoom that I never use, because I always use Google Hangouts. So give me a moment here in speaker view and get this all moved out and my screen shared. Okay, can people see this?
Yes, we do.
Cool, perfect. Okay, hey, welcome everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm a huge fan of WoCl Climate and been so for many, many years. So it's really cool. It's my first workshop with all of you. Okay, we dive in. I have a lot to go through. And Priyanka is already nervous because I told her I might go over the time that she gave me. So let's see how we can do that. We have Q&A at the end where I ask questions. So if you have any questions coming up throughout my talk, put it in the chat. We're going to collect those and I'm trying to get through as many as possible as I can. But then we can always move the conversations into the WoCl Climate Slack channel. And hopefully I can help more people there. But let's dive in. I'd like to start my session with a promise to all of you. So here's my promise. By the end of this session, you will have two things. You'll have a different perspective on how to land a job in climate. And I want to give you actual steps that you can do to showcase your transferable skills. And hopefully you also will have met a few people in the breakout rooms that we do at the end and maybe tackle a few challenges that we're going to share throughout this talk. And I have briefs at the end that you can take home as well with more information on that, how to do that too. Let's dive in. I already get an intro. Who is this Marco person? I think there's three numbers. If you remember anything, remember these three numbers about me: 18, 1,000, and 2. Why 18? This is my background. I grew up in rural Germany, raised by a single mom. I was the first member in my family to go to university. So education and constant self-improvement was something I always did. And why 18? Well, I still remember the day that I learned how ATMs in the US work. They don't give more than $20 bills out. And I had only had 18 bucks in my account when I was here. And I was like, okay, that's going to be tough. And, you know, that's where I started, 18 bucks. And then, you know, the 1,000, I started my own education company many, many moons ago and taught, you know, through that hundreds of students in the classroom. That was technical skills back then when coding was all the rage, and started coding on one of the first online coding bootcamp. I scaled it up. That was acquired by the fastest growing edtech company. I scaled their online offering up there, and that was all about moving people into new careers. So I did that with thousands of people. And ultimately, we were acquired for $750 million by 2U, a publicly traded company at the time, the largest acquisition in edtech. And that was kind of like this 1,000, like, I think the number is bigger, but I helped at least 1,000 people like move from where they were into completely new careers that they didn't have a lot of background. So the last one, 2, this is my motivation, why I'm doing this, why I'm holding these workshops. I have 2 young kids, and I know they will ask me, Daddy, what are you doing to help Mother Nature? And that's probably their 3 and 5. I probably have another 5 years before I get these serious questions, but I better make sure that the only answer I can give them is, hey, everything I could every single day. That's what I'm doing. And so what has that all to do with climate? Right now, how you land a job in climate is very similar how you landed a job back in tech when I started with coding boot camps 10, 15 years ago. You know, when the Facebook movie came out, everyone wanted to be a coder. And that's very similar to where we are right now. But the fact that all of you are here is amazing because you're early. And when you're early, the path isn't as smooth or laid out as it should be, but the results are so much more rewarding if you can make it happen. Okay, let's dive in. I want to give everyone, you know, this is like, you got to think, you got to type into chat. So over the last 12 months, right, I talked to 150 plus people one-on-one in mentor sessions who want to transition into climate and help workshops for 100 plus people. Now we have here, I don't know how many people we have here, almost 200, amazing. And then help thousands of people transition careers, right? And so this was for people early in the career, all the way up to like 15 plus years and of professional experience on the executive level. So all of them told me like kind of their number one problem, what that was. So I want to hear from all of you. What do you think that is? What is it for you? Put it in the chat. We're going to look at that, what people are saying. Okay, people are putting in, cool. Oh, this is going way too fast for me. I'm scrolling. I can't keep up. This is awesome. Okay, love that. No experience, skill gap, right? Problems, okay. Subject matter experts, I love that. Lack of understanding, okay. Matching skills to experience, great. Yeah, I think this is so cool. This directly resonates. I was hoping people would say that. That directly resonates with what I hear. I don't have direct experience. It doesn't work for me. What's going on? This is what I keep hearing over and over again. But what this really means is when I dig deeper and ask why a few times, people can't communicate their value that they can give or bring to a climate company, right? And so, you know, let me give you a crazy example of how this oftentimes plays out. Let's use the internet. Everyone knows the internet by now. We're like digital natives here. So let's assume you work at a tech startup. Let's say the company, it's 2008, and the company is called the Facebook, and you jump on a networking call, and all you talk about with somebody at Facebook who wants to maybe hire you, you talk about how the internet will change everything, how it's a place where people maybe could connect, how your passion is to connect everyone, and maybe if they have a job, right? Well, you know, your chances of joining one of the hottest tech startup companies back then in 2008, it's very, very slim when you come like, hey, I just want to connect people. How can I get a job here? If you come across and be like, hey, you know, I see where it's going right now. Web 1.0 is like all static. We don't have interaction. I think there's the next evolution. Let's call it Web 2.0. And this is where you can share your experience with your friends, where there's interaction back and forth going on, everything we take for granted right now. But if you came through the door back then, and then you would relate that to, let's say you're a marketer, and you relate that to, hey, and in marketing, you know, targeting customers via ads is something that doesn't exist. Everyone has these crappy banner ads, and they're super inefficient. So if you do something on that, your business model could be really cool. If you have that kind of conversation, you come in at a completely different level. And that's like a very simple example and very low level simplified. But so many people do exactly that in the first way they come into climate. They're like, I'm so passionate about climate, but you don't know how to provide that value, right? And so it's not really working. So let's look at the story. This is Bart. He came to me in February of this year, and he said he needs help switching into a climate job. And, you know, he applied to a climate drift career accelerator. We accepted him. His background is solid. like 15 years of professional experience in the product and tech space, last role as a VP at a huge bank. But he also said, I'm going to quit my job. I'm serious about this. And he walked away from he said that overpaid VP role at a big bank. And he signed up for every education company under the sun in climate education. And he's like, nothing really worked for me. It was all education, but it didn't connect to like the job or how do I land a job. But what did work for him? It was focusing on focusing on the playbook that we do here at Climate Drift, right? The playbook we're going to run today. It's focus and depth. In other words, find a niche, learn as much as you can about the niche, and then solve a challenge in that niche that was relevant to the people in there. And so, you know, I can talk about him, we get back to him later, but what we do today is we're going to reverse engineer what Barrett did, the Climate Drift playbook. And before we do that, we need to acknowledge a few things first. So first thing is a job search versus a career transition, right? So many people have that mixed up. A job search is when you look for jobs on job boards, you apply, you send resumes, you send cover letters. A career transition is when you move out of tech and you want to get into climate tech. Two different worlds. In order to do that, you need to do different things, right? If you bet lots of people in here applied for jobs and heard nothing back and got ghosted and it didn't quite work. Fully normal. And unfortunately, that's the reality right now in climate tech. And it was also early tech. When you wanted to go work for Facebook, you couldn't just apply for a job. They didn't know what they wanted back then. Same as the climate tech companies. They don't know what kind of talent they need for many of the positions because everything's brand new and changing all the time. So it's an issue on both sides. Hopefully in a few years this will go away, but right now we have that. So in order to do a career transition successfully, you need to connect the dots for the people in the climate tech companies, for the hiring managers, and how to connect your skills, right, to the problems that they have helps the leaders in a climate tech company actually see like the value that you're bringing. So don't think job search, think career transition. And, you know, for a career transition, you usually have to come over, tackle 4 problems. This is usually what we hear. I don't have a climate network. I'm drowning in solutions. I don't have that experience, what we talked about before, and I don't quite know how to pull up that job transition experience. So is there something we can do to go through that? And my answer to that is yes. And that is leading with value. I don't know why somebody copied a Spotify link here. I don't know where that goes. Please don't copy that link. But what the heck does that mean, leading with value, right? Think back to the internet example. Think back to imagine what I know many of our Climate Drift members are doing right now. They're sharing a solution to a problem that keeps climate leaders up at night, and they share that directly with them. And you know, as a founder, somebody who hired a lot of people and helped people hire as well, there's nobody better that you want to hire who walks through your door with understanding the challenges that you have, something that bothers you and keeps you up at night that you think about nonstop, and then also has solutions in their hands. It doesn't even matter if the solutions are the best one or not maybe the right ones, but the fact that they got to that point is huge for you to like, man, I can see how that person will provide value from day one in our company and can bring us to the next level. That's what I mean by leading with value. So people that get hired first, so you want to be one of them, but how? So finally, after, what is that, slide 8, we get to how can we do this? So now I'm running through the playbook with you, and I have weeks to do all this with members in our Climate Drift program. We're doing this super condensed, so bear with me. Hopefully it won't be too fast. So first thing you need to do is you need to get orientated. Find your way around. We have this Climate Drift solution maps with tons of little arrows coming out. It has 220 solutions, 12 of the most impactful client sectors. First thing you do is get that map. And then look at it whenever you want to find out a new place. So you can download this all for free. We can maybe share the link to it. It's on climatedrift.com. and we have a direct link too. Maybe we can get that in chat right now. If not, we'll share that with all of you, or you can just search climate drift solutions map. That should come up easy. Don't pay for it. Just put in 0. I don't know why there's a donation button still on it, but we need to take that off. Use that. That's the first way to actually figure out, like, hey, I'm interested in energy. What else is out there? And then you see all these little branches come off. And then you need to find your climate niche, right? So stepping back, in case this isn't obvious yet, it's pretty much impossible to an expert in every single climate subsector or climate niche, right? So if you have imposter syndrome and you're like, oh my God, just look at this map again. And it's like, there's no way that somebody who's in a subsector of energy, say rooftop solar or EV battery technology for trucking, is also an expert at something on completely different, like food waste management or something like that, or supply chain logistics for shipping, right? It's impossible to know everything. So think about that every time you feel like, oh my God, I feel such a rookie. But this also means that you need to find that niche, and you need to take some time to look into at least a few of those niches to think if you can get excited about it, and if this is your niche, right? So when I do this, I usually look at several things together. If I think, could this be some place where I get excited about? I usually think, who's the customer? Can I be happy working for them and with those type of people? So for example, if you're producing carbon-free cement, like Sublime System, who's a hiring partner for us here at Climate Drift, then you're dealing with the trench construction companies. You're dealing with cities who assign the work to those construction companies. Like, do I want to work with those people day and night? Do I want to serve them? Because this is my target customer. So very important to figure that out. This is the first one. Then it's like, what's the stage of the company, right? If everyone in the company is wearing a lab coat and they're still like figuring out the fundamental technology behind their solution, and you, let's say, a marketer or a salesperson, I probably don't necessarily need you right there. So figure out the stage of the company. And last, I say, look at the hype curve and figure out where they are. By hype curve, I mean, is right now everyone talking about them because it's the coolest new solution out there, but the tech maybe is still unproven. So all the investors are basically waiting if these solutions can scale, but publicly talking about it like this is the next best thing and the only thing that can save humanity, right? So figure that out. And we have tons of these hype curves on climatedrift.com as resources for you. And you can just look at them and then get a pretty good understanding, like if it's peak hype or is like this is actually starting to scale, and it's now becoming a business that will have linear growth. The other best way to do this is to actually figure out a challenge that a climate company has right now. So let's dive into that. Again, this is going to be the how to get yourself a climate problem, right? Two things. You can identify current problems and then tackle a climate problem. So this is all about how can you showcase your skills and stop talking about them. It's all about showing what you can do. So in order to do that, you need to find the challenges and get a climate problem. First, you pick the niche. We always done that. Great. So now you have two options, the easy route and the more advanced route. The easy route, I'd say, and I'll go through this in a moment. The easy route is if you're earlier in your career, looking for more maybe entry level, like I'd say like 1, 2, 3 years of professional experience, maybe that's the way to do it. It could also be for something just to ramp up and get familiar with it. And then the more advanced one is finding a challenge that's specific to a company or a subsector and a challenge that they face today, and then applying your experiences and skills to provide a possible solution, right? Two different levels, easy at the bottom, advanced at the top. Let's dive in. What's the easy route? Easy route is you can do an industry or company breakdown. You're interested in a niche, figure that out. Here's two that we've done. Mushrooms as viable option for alternative meat. That would be your industry breakdown, right? You can talk about how to make industrial heat a lot less dependent on fossil fuels. And there's a company like Rondo Energy, also a hiring partner at Climate Drift, how they do it and how they tackle it. Something pretty straightforward to do. industry breakdown, company breakdown. The other one is concrete improvements, right? I kid you not when I say how many landing pages of climate tech companies are not telling you what they're doing. If you job search and you look like what they're doing, actually, I bet you on many, you have to click around 10 times to even understand what they're doing. And so, hey, if you're a marketer, if you're in communication, storyteller, this is your easy route. Hey, give him a few, hey, here's what you have right now. Here's how I would improve that. Communicates your message to your customers 10 times better. Super easy to do. Still need to do your homework, but you can draw on your skills. Last one is, hey, there's tons of news coming out of companies all the time. You can synthesize that, bring your own perspective to it. For example, right now, I think the Financial Times just talked about air turbulence is getting way worse due to climate change, and airlines are trying to cope with it. How are they coping with it? Super interesting. Lots of people talking about it right now. This literally happened this week. So way more examples like this. This is how you can think about what can I do to not just learn about a need, but then actually do something that will help me get to a place where I was like, yeah, I know more than just like, I'm so passionate about this sector. I actually know what's going on here, and I shared that, and I can share that with people. Okay, let's move on to the more advanced challenges. Okay, advanced route. Obviously, this is more because it's advanced. 5 steps. We already picked the niche. That's great. But now we need to dive deeper, and now we need to pull out these challenges that companies having. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can talk to people, ask them straight. Some give you the answer, some are not. Some give you like, or you can look for them. I'm going to show you the way of like how you look and find them on your own and how to do that. It's a very tactical approach to this, but it will help you get like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. Obviously, like I talk to a lot of leaders and hiring managers in climate tech companies, and I ask them, and that's core of what we do at the Climate Drift Accelerator, is pull these challenges together for people to tackle. Here's your playbook on how you do that by yourself. And just to be very clear, I have usually weeks to work through with people to get this right. And now I get maybe a few minutes to run you through. So this will be fast. But we record that. You can watch it again. You can read the transcript. So just, this is like big picture thinking, but it should give you the right idea. All right. First, let's say, you pick a niche. So if you're like me and you maybe just got interested in rooftop solar, or you put solar panels on your roof, right? You're like, okay, that's something I like this. This is so cool. You pick residential solar. Perfect. You want to dive in more. So first you got to do your homework, right? In order to do that, you need to understand 2 things. Baseline understanding, right? We have 10 essential books on climate solutions with like deep dives, some think tanks. That's a starting point, right? Just pick the one out for residential solar that works. You need to read. I find books the best way to get there, the fastest. That's your baseline. Next level is find the most recent and relevant interview posts. Podcasts are the best one. If you can share the links to the 10 best books that we have and top 10 climate podcasts with the best episodes as well that we're thinking, super helpful, gives you a starting point already where you can dive in. Obviously, if you think back to the example into rooftop solar, residential solar, you need to look for those type of episodes within the podcast. I've done that. I went ahead and looked at rooftop solar, and so I found this episode from Shah Khan, right, of The Catalyst. Probably many people know him, know the podcast, listen to it. So now I have that, and they talk about if VPPs can save rooftop solar. Well, hold on, what's even the problem, right? So listen to it once, get the full picture, and then dive into the transcript and be like, okay, what can I actually find out if there is a real challenge that companies in rooftop solars are struggling with solving right now? And so we can totally do that. If you dig in, you see this, right? You see 2 notes. This is literally me copying, pasting from the show note, from the transcript of the notes. Like rooftop solar applications in California plunged 82% for the second half of 2023. Tons of reasons behind that. You can find those out. Probably valuable to know that. All about permitting and stuff. But it's crazy to think about that. So that obviously keeps some people up at night right now who run residential rooftop solar companies, the big ones and the small ones, right? And then they actually give you possible solutions that all the major solar companies are working right now, which is the second quote that I have here, which is like, can we somehow tell the homeowners that they need a battery to combine it? Okay, but they also need a virtual power plant. And if you add them together, the financing works way better. Okay, it gets confusing because every homeowner is like, what? Sorry, I lost you right off the battery. Virtual, what do you want me to do? And so that's when it becomes interesting, right? You can now go deeper. So now you search for like battery home bundling solutions, and you come across a company that's called Base, power company. And you're like, oh, they're doing this already. They do the virtual power plant. Don't worry about what that is right now. With batteries for rooftop solar to make the whole system cheaper for the end customer. Great. How can I learn more of those? Oh, great. There is actually a 20-page breakdown by Not Boring exactly on this company and how they're operating. Now you're distilling this, right? You figured out, here's a challenge that I just saw. They're talking for the entirety of rooftop solar. Then you found a company that actually solves that issue. Then you learned more about them. And then you ask yourself, well, what's a possible solution for that? This is one. Is there another one? What's Tesla doing about it? What's Sunrun doing about this? How are other people tackling this, right? And if I get emails from Tesla about once a week, if I want to buy one of their batteries, they haven't figured this out. So now we had a problem of like, this is what keeps people in that industry up at night right now because they can't sell their stuff anymore and they're looking for different solutions. And then you can go in and be like, let me spell out the problem and solve it. So depending on your skills, you can find your angle. So let's say you're in marketing, right? How do you now create the right messaging for solar owners to buy batteries and buy into virtual power plants? What the heck are virtual power plants, right? That is a really concrete example right now that solar companies are struggling with now and have that discussion. If you're in financing and sales, it's the same. How do I explain that financing thing? Virtual power plants, right? They pay you something, they suck battery out of your energy out of your battery when they need it for someplace else, and you won't have as much, but they pay you for that, which makes the financing of your entire system a lot cheaper. That's in a nutshell, right? And then the last thing is like product. Like, how do I build a product that is easy for homeowners to use and understand what's happening with their system at any given moment, based that it's not just energy produced on the roof and then fed into the grid. Now it's fed into a battery, and there's somebody who's maybe taking energy out at peak times and leaving them in or putting them back in from the grid. So really interesting to see like how can I cross of those, how can I make those solutions and communicate them to climate tech companies who are struggling with that right now in the niche of rooftop residential solars. Okay, I'll take a sip of water. We have tons of questions. I want to go into some examples, but this is like the very condensed version of how I think about finding those challenges and then actually applying your skills to it and becoming a mini expert in a very, very niche area of climate tech, but it's relevant and valuable to a lot of companies and people operating within that space. Okay, Priyanka, how nervous are you on time? We're good?
We're good, yeah.
Okay, cool, I keep going.
So, yeah.
You tell me, hurry up. Got it. Okay, a few examples how this could look like, right? These are members in the Climate Drift Career Accelerator. So here is Barrett again from early, right? He decided to go into enteric methane. I always butcher that pronunciation, but cow burps, right? Huge issue. He wrote a deep dive on that on Climate Drift. You can find it too. You can share links later. And so he dove into that challenge, and that actually helped him land his job at Spark Climate, right? This is a science-driven nonprofit that tackles areas of high impact and emerging climate fields. And cow burps is something that has huge impact, but no one's really tackled it. Not a lot of funding going into it right now, but it's the cutting edge stuff. So he got into that way. He's like, I'm a gardener. I love planting. I love being outside in nature, doing something with plants, doing something with animals. I think he has chickens at home. It's a perfect fit for him. He's super stoked right now. Here's another example. This is Clint. He actually wrote the guide to virtual power plants. So me talking about virtual power plants, read that. It'll explain exactly what that is. This is deep dive. And so he, heard earlier that virtual power plants is something that every utility right now is struggling with and trying to figure out. So he wrote about that and then used this to actually get in front of the right people with like, hey, I actually know this really well. And then he is now at the California public utility as an analyst. When I tell this people, they usually tell me, oh, this is so boring. But, it's actually not boring. It's like strategically such a smart move because give him 2 years and he will be on every recruiting list for every energy startup that deals with utilities because he will know how the utilities in California work, how energy prices are set much better than anyone else because he's been there for 2 years, right? He knows the people, the operations, the system, and everyone within that universe. Another example is Vianney. This is, I'd say, the classic product management example. Vianney has 10 years of experience at best companies in tech, I think Google, Spotify. And he read between the lines when he heard from one of our speakers, who's the head of circular economy at IKEA, about their thoughts on helping customers make the right purchasing decision between new and secondhand. So he went and gave them a full mock-up of how this could work online and in store for customers and went deep on that circularity, right? Then he realized he doesn't want to move to Sweden, but now he works at Cornell Tech in New York City, where he's based, and he works on the open source software to help with Local Law 97. For you, maybe live in New York, you know about that, but that's a huge environmental compliance law for all the renters and landlords on what they need to do with their real estate assets. And so he's working on solutions for that. Now, there's so many more. There's Sinead, Brenda, who worked on really cool pieces and all using this. And the playbook they're following is all the same. It's lead with value, right? How can I create interest so people come to me and want to talk more about the stuff that I shared? And that's what we're doing at Climate Drift all day long. It's like getting people to be in a position where it's like, man, this is so cool what you shared about virtual power plants. Very relevant for what we're doing. Can we talk more? Man, this is so cool what you talked about, how about enteric cowburps, enteric methane. Like, we're really looking into this. Can we talk more? And that's where I want all of you to get to. Just do that homework and then be in a position where, like, I know this space now very, very well, and I can see the world the same way as somebody who's in that space and been in there for several years already. And I know their problems and their challenges, and I can bring up some solutions that I think with my skills, I can solve. And as a different way of looking at it, drawing from your personal and professional background. Okay. What we then usually hear from people is, before your program, I heard crickets. I was ghosted. I didn't get any response. I don't know what's going on. And now, they share a post like this and they're like, okay, now I have calls with leaders scheduled in that space, in that niche where I want to be. And they all reached out to me to talk. So they reached out to me, which is completely different than submitting applications, right? You get inbound interest. That's what we want to do. So think about that. Think about leading with value, and think about tackling these challenges, finding them and then tackling them, and then start sharing them with the people who you actually want to talk to. And, now let's go back to my very first slide. This was a lot, but I had a promise, I told you that you should have a different perspective and you should have actionable steps at the beginning. So if you paid attention and this wasn't too fast, because I'm cautious of time, then you should now know the difference between a job search and a career transition. You should think about how to lead with value, why that matters, why that's so important in order to land a job in something as new as many of these niches in climate tech. And then you should also know what you can do, the actionable steps, right? How to pick the easy challenges, how to pick the more advanced challenges, how to find them, how to listen for them, how to read in between the lines. And hopefully I achieved that. And if you don't want to do that alone, you can join me at the next Climate Drift Career Accelerator. We start June 10th. We have scholarships available. Price shouldn't be an issue. I offered everyone at Work on Climate a 10% discount. Just mention Work on Climate in your application. We can make that happen. And for the last cohort, we had 50 people in there. We already have 40 accepted. And our interview calendars are pretty packed, but we might go probably above 50 people for this cohort. Not too much. We want to keep it really high quality. And then, in case you're curious, I was told I should share this because people will ask. This is our weekly topics that we're picking. We're choosing them by funding and flow into that sector and impact that the sector has. Every week we start out with a starter pack, an intro session to that sector. We bring in speakers from the investor community and from the actual leaders within that subsector to talk about their challenges and really figure out what keeps them up at night, so we can get that inside perspective. And then we talk about how to put all of our members into a position where they can synthesize that content and apply their transferable skills so they can get that inbound interest. And so we've done our first cohort, and we've been, we finished them 4 weeks ago. Our members had about an average of 10 years of professional experience, and they held each other to a very high standard. And they also held all of us at Climate Drift to a very high standard. So getting these type of comments after the program, it was shocking to me because it's really hard impressing those people. And they gave us a 60 NPS and 4.5 out of 5 star satisfaction rating. So, you can only get these when you deliver something that is of high value to people that are that experienced and, have background at Apple, JP Morgan Chase, Wall Street Oil and Gas, or even work in leadership positions at the Belinda and or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or now I think going to Gates Foundation. So that's what I have. I want to dive into Q&A now. I'm 38 minutes in. You gave me 40, I think. So hopefully that was okay. And hopefully I wasn't too much. I see over 100 in the chat. How many people did I confuse?
So great. Thank you, Marco, for your presentation. We will now open for Q&A. So if you want to ask question by yourself, just raise the hand, unmute yourself and go ahead. And we'll also take some questions from the chat. Yeah, Ingrid, if I pronounce it, Ingrid, go ahead.
You're muted, or I can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Okay, should we do next person?
Yeah.
Can you put it in the chat and then I grab it that way?
Yeah, Trevor, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Hey, Marco. Good to see you again. How have you been?
Hey, we talked plenty times. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, with Climate Drift and a lot of these different career accelerators, I'm looking at the application page and it says mid-career and exec levels. For people who are like me, who are a bit earlier in their career, would you suggest this program, or how would you suggest going about it?
I love it. So it's a really good point, right? So we don't have a hard line where we say like you need to have this much experience, but we want to know what you've done before. And I know your background, Trevor. So it's like, yes, this will work for you. But it's like, if you just graduated undergrad, and that program is probably not for you, because the people who you with in the cohort are people who have, let's say, 5+ years of professional experience, right? And they're trying to take that background and that experience, and then put that onto the challenges that they see and use that as their transferable skills, right? If you earlier in your career, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And the follow-up, beyond whatever else you were about to say, it would be about the scholarship aspect, because as I'm sure a lot of people like us, not only career transitioners, but job seekers, the finances might be a problem as well.
Yeah, so happy to talk about that. So we do, so let's do one after another. If you're early in your career, you still want to join that, we're starting a community where we learn and we do together, which is similar to this, but we don't have all the speakers in there. We don't have all the high touch, but it's like, hey, here's a community of people who want to tackle those. So that's something that you could do if you're earlier. You can share the links after that, or maybe in work on climate as well in the Slack. So there's another offer that we have for people if they want to do that. For the main program, the Climate Drift Career Accelerator, if you want to, about scholarships, we give out a lot of scholarships. We have a lot of supporters who believe in what we're doing. And so the way, if you go fill out the application, there's a section that asks like, what, do you need a scholarship? Yes, no. And then we ask you why, because we're thinking about need-based, like what's your background? Be open and honest there. I read all of them. And then we ask you, what's your number that you're comfortable contributing to this, right? And put in the number that you're comfortable. What we're trying then is like, we invite you to an interview, we talk about that. We can talk about the scholarships as well. And then we try to match that and get to as close as we can, right? So the cost of the full program is $2,000. If you say I can only pay half, then it's on me to make that happen. I want you in the program because we talked and it was like, you'll be a great fit. Let's make that happen. And so that's how we're working this through. Thumbs up. I don't know. I still don't see you anymore.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. I just
Okay, cool.
put my hand down so other people know. That was good. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Who's next? Priyanka, you got to help me.
Yeah, sure. Ingrain,
Okay.
do you want to try? No, we still can't hear you. We're sorry.
I'm so sorry. This is frustrating.
Jared, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Marco, really appreciate your presentation. Really enjoyed it. Took away a lot of good tips from there, and definitely some action items for after this. My question for you is around where I should focus. So when I started my career transition into climate, what I really wanted to get into was something in the food and ag space. Similar to Barrett, I'm a home gardener, really passionate about food waste, anything agriculture related. The challenge I found is that there aren't nearly as many opportunities within the food and ag space. Even if you go across everything within that, it's kind of hard to find opportunities, at least as it relates to my experience. So what I've done in the last couple of months is cast a much wider net and apply to all sorts of energy companies focusing on like HVAC and sustainable heating and cooling solutions and heat pump water heaters, which I'm also interested in, but not as passionate about as, say, food, ag, eliminating food waste. As a result, I've had way more interviews with way more companies. So I'm gaining a lot more traction than when I was focusing just on food and ag. But, in a perfect world, I would get something in food and ag, not something in like, say, the energy space, which I view as more of a stepping stone to get to where I ultimately want to go. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that, on around like focusing on one particular area versus trying to apply to anything that's climate related.
Okay. This is a super good question. And it's like, think about, it's the same, like I want to work in the internet. And it's like, okay, hold on, where, right? So you've already done that, which is great. In that event, it's where I like to be. And just for context, Barrett didn't say in the beginning, I'm going to go into food and ag and then cowburbs, right? That he looked at 5 other sectors, did some deep dives, and then the end, he's like, man, this is really cool. And I was actually like, this came out of left field. I was like, hold on, what? And then he explained it to me, and I was like, oh my God, this actually fits with you, right? So the path to finding your spot isn't linear. It's going to be like back for a few steps back, up, down, sideways. That's totally normal. That's what a career transition looks like. So I would encourage you to look into the food and ag sector a bit more, but look at it with this like, hey, where are the challenges? And then go there. A lot of people in that space, especially if something is early, they might not even know that they have that problem, but they don't know who they need for that to help. And then if you can be like, well, here's how my skills would relate to this, and I know you have that challenge, then that opens up the conversation and it's like, man, we actually need somebody like you. The job that Barrett got wasn't, as far as I'm concerned, wasn't even posted. It was just like, man, whatever, I need to work with you. Let's go. Here's what I need help with. Can you help? And he's like, yeah, let's go. And that's what did it. Nobody applied for that job, as far as I know. And so there wasn't really interview. He kept working with them and helping them. And they're like, man, we need somebody like you. It's perfect. Let's move. So think about it from that perspective. How can you provide value? That opens up actually positions that are not listed. And then, but to the other sector as well, because it's what's really hard mentally is if you're trying so hard to get into one and it feels like it's stalling, and then you get discouraged and you feel like you need to start over in something else. So I always say do two. Like, so you get, if you have the energy already, do that. And then, hey, if you use that as a stepping stone, totally fine. Like in 5 years, no one will care about that you had a stepping stone there. Only you care about that right now in that moment. But you know, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't connect the dots looking forwards. So, you know, classic Steve Jobs quote, but think about it that way. Hope that's helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, who else we have?
Yeah, so we have time for like a couple more questions. Let's make it quick. Isaac, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, Marco. We've actually met before. We discussed several months back. I had done the Climate Base and the Terra.do programs. In the past, I've did some work for the United Nations Development Program, their sustainability initiatives in Latin America. And since I moved back to LA, it's been difficult transitioning into the climate space, but I do a lot of networking and I attend a lot of events in person. And I'm very much now about proactively creating content that helps climate tech companies and also nonprofits. I work in marketing and communications. I'm a content writer. So I guess if you could review and elaborate a little bit more on the process that you have for targeting the company. I mean, I understand the niche and like studying the company, but I found that a couple of times I went and proactively created like a pitch for content, a newsletter, and thought like, you know, maybe your company or your organization would really like to get earned media for this press, for this coalition that you've built, or this new tech that you're developing. And they'll show appreciation, but I'll get crickets afterwards. So, and it's like I've spent a lot of time proactively researching them and creating that content, even if, especially if I know somebody there.
Yep.
And so I'm wondering what you think about that, like how not to spend too much time doing work for free and not getting anything returned. Okay,
this is awesome. This is so cool. Like, I know we talked before, so it's cool. Like, good job for everything you're doing. I love it. I think there is one piece or maybe two that you could think of before starting diving in. If you're like at that level already, where it's like, I know where I want to go. I know my niche. I know where to, what problem or challenge I'm going to tackle. It's like figuring out, it's like, where are they in the growth stage of their company, right? Because if they're right now not in a position where they have headcount needs, meaning they're going to hire, they got just a new round of funding, or they're about to raise a new one, that's actually the better position to be in, you're earlier ahead of the curve, then you're going to do something like, that's great, but we can't move on this right now. So then you're like, then you just need to play the long game and be like, okay, I stay top of mind, keep helping out, but it doesn't get you to the goal that you want, but it builds that relationship. And so that's frustrating. But the step to do that ahead is like actually trying to figure that out. So the way to figure that out is by seeing if they're right now raising funds. So again, if you look at when they raised last, when you're thinking about how many open job positions do they have right now? Are they hiring for a senior leader on their team? Because once you hire a VP of something, they have headcounts of people hire underneath. So it's like, that's really good. So the moment they do that, you know they're going to have that. That's when you want to come in. So these are the sweet spots that you need to tease out. You can also ask them straight out if you have networking calls. Like, what's your growth plan for the next 6-12 months in terms of teams, and which ones are you focusing? Which ones are you growing? At conferences and recorded conference talks, leaders oftentimes share that information as well, because you give a talk because you're like, I want to hire, so I'm going to raise the public profile of my company. And so that's another way of getting that and teasing that out. But I think you need that missing, you have that missing point of like, they're at the stage right now where they need to grow.
Usually I do it when they're hiring. So if like there's a position I'm interested in, that's when I'll go and create the content and not just include it as part of the application. I'll also send it to people that work at the organization.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a solid strategy. Then you just need to be like, okay, not every you know, everything you do will work out. Like that's just normal. So you just have to be like, okay, this is at the end of the day, it's still a numbers game. I would focus a lot more on where do I have the highest probability of success based on like, they're not just putting one position out, but they're building an entire department. I would focus that.
Appreciate it.
Cool.
Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks so much, Isaac.
All right. So unfortunately, we are short of time, so we can take only one question. Keegan, can you please go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we do.
So for those of us with a little bit more experience, I have about 16 years of experience in software development, ranging from various positions on the stack. Would it be better to search out positions that kind of align with the experience we already have because we can provide more value there? Or would it be better to search for industries that are having the most meaningful impact, regardless what skill sets they're looking for?
Oh, such a good question, Keegan. Okay, this comes down to personal preference, right? Some people say like, no, I can't work on this thing over here because the impact is 10 times less than what I could do over here with energy or whatever, right? My mindset is anything right now, if you're not working in climate and you move your talent into climate, any impact that you bring in is better than none, right? So that's my baseline. And then I say, okay, if I get very tactical and I decide like, wait, which route is easier for me? And you're like, okay, you're gonna go a place where it's like, hey, I have all this software engineering background, and I'm gonna go into an area where that is needed. Here, side note, like so many hard tech companies have 0 software layers right now that allows their customers to communicate with the hardware. There's gonna be huge need for that. Like interface building and how that works, like on the back end, like huge need. So that's going to come up. There's people talking right now of doing, you know, not marketing agencies, but software development agencies just for climate tech companies to build that layer. So huge need. So just throwing that out there for you because you're in that space. And so I would think go where you have the easiest time communicating your skills, and then once you're there and you're doing that and get familiar with that, you can always look for other things. Again, think stepping stones and don't think like, well, you know, that's about so many tons of greenhouse gas emissions avoided for this, but if I work over there, it'll be more. Just have peace with that with your own. It's like you do one step at a time. You can't solve everything overnight. And if you get the high impact job, in terms of like, you know, impact on climate, perfect. But I wouldn't keep myself up at night worrying about that. I would go like, there's so many other things. You can have the best job, but you hate your boss and your team, but the impact is great. You're not going to be happy there. There's so many variables that only you know that matter to you to bring your best work. And that's much more important than you being like, well, it would, you know, I suffer right now professionally and personally every single day, but I have more impact. I wouldn't do that because long term, you're not gonna be happy, and then you can't bring your best self. That was my answer. I don't know if this is good. I can't see you anymore, but.
All right. So let's move ahead. I'm so sorry, Natalie, Gabriella, and Eric, and those who put their questions in the chat. We will have an opportunity to get those answered by Marco in our Slack community, WoCl Climate Slack community. So stay tuned for that information. Towards the end, we are going to disclose how we are going to do that. So let's begin the breakout sessions now. Let me create the rooms, and if you want, Marco, you can take one more question from maybe Eric while I create the breakout rooms.
Hey, Marco,
Okay.
thank
And
you.
Eric and I talked already. I feel like this is almost cheating, but you go, Eric.
Thanks again. Yeah, no, I think you know my story a little bit, but briefly, the challenges for me is finding the right companies and my target industries who are actually hiring. So I think I've done a good job, comparatively speaking, of getting in advance for companies and meeting the right hiring managers, but they're not yet hiring because they're waiting for budget or hitting milestones. Alternately, the other challenge I've had is companies have some openings, but of course they strongly prefer and message that they strive for candidates that have direct experience in that vertical. So I'm open to other verticals as we've discussed, but I don't really want to be scattershot, although I have pursued other things. So just open as general suggestions. I don't know if others are in maybe a similar sort of scenario. Thank you.
So what is your question? That's so unclear.
Yeah, basically
All right,
just how to find the right companies that actually are
Okay.
gonna hire.
Okay, so this is like, I would look at company stage. Think about, there's something called a TRL, Technological Readiness Level Scale.
Yeah.
Look at that. You probably know that. I know your background, but look at that and trying to place them there. So trying to find the companies that are about to get from level, whatever, 3, 4 to like up, and then be like, okay, these are the ones that now need the growth talent to bring their company to the next level. If you can start doing that, then you actually talk to the people that about need you, right? Or people who just moved into that. So that's a bit hard to do, but that's a very nuanced way of looking at it. And so it's like, if everyone in that company still wears a lab coat and you coming in as the person want to build and grow, which is, I know your background is what you're doing, really hard to then be like, well, you need me. It's like, well, not now, but maybe in 6 months. And then you have these type of conversations, which you don't want to have, right? You want to be in well, we just had this at the board meeting where we talked about, we go into the next level and we actually need somebody like you. Can we talk more? That's the position you want. So I would look at stage of the company. I would look at like who's in there, what's their background. Do they have somebody even in the growth stage of the company? Like, is a marketer there? Is a salesperson there? Is there a biz dev person there? If there's one person there, much more likely that they need more, versus if there's 0, then you're like, maybe I'm too early.
At the end of our session, and I would, before we conclude, I would like you all to go ahead and use this QR code to give us the feedback about today's event. Your feedback and your it really helps us greatly to make even better events. And I hope you gained some valuable insights. And if you want to continue to work on your challenges that were given in the breakout rooms, please join our jobs discussion channel in our Slack community. Discuss there, get feedback on your solutions, work with people from the community, many more than this meeting, of course. And you have 1 week to submit the solution. So you'll get rest of the information on our channel. And I hope to see your solutions in a week's time. I would like to thank Marco today for his time and great insights and great presentation, Marco. Thank you everybody to sticking around till the end. And I hope to see you in the next event. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.